The Sports Town Podcast.
Hey guys, it's JJ Peters. Thanks again for listening. Can't thank you enough. Whether you're listening on the audio platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and others, or just watching it on YouTube, we can't thank you enough. Thanks so much again for watching the Sports Town or listening to the Sports Town Podcast. Big thanks to Jesse Head from the Heads Up Falcons podcast. He came on late notice to talk about the Julio Jones trade. That was a great conversation. You can check out his podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and many more. You can also follow him on Instagram at Atlanta Falcons Podcast. Also, then returning guest Kyle Hoffman from the Pickle podcast comes on the pod to discuss UFC 263 and a reaction to the Floyd Maywheather and J.R. Logan Paul fight. You can find the Pickle podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many other platforms. You can also follow him on Instagram and Facebook at the Pickle Podcast. If you also want merch for the Pickle Podcast, don't forget to check out Instagram, and I think there's a link there in the description down below. So again, don't forget to check that out. And as always, we have the Sports Lightning Round, questions from Instagram, poll question, highlight of the week, and much more. Also, if you're interested in merch, I've been telling this to a lot of people recently, but I've got a few designs that I think you guys would like, and we're very close to starting getting merch for the STP pod. If you want, just email me at sportstownpodcast.com or at sportstownpodcast@gmail.com or DM me. Or you can even write in the comment section on YouTube, want STP merch. Thanks again for listening, and as always, let's get it going. And first, we'll start off with the highlight of the week.
Blocked in front. Pacioretty up for Stone. He's got room. Mark Stone scores! Mark Stone, overtime winner! And the Golden Knights are going home to Vegas with a chance to win the series.
What a game that was. The Knights take the game and the series, but especially that game. The Knights defeated the Avalanche 3-2 in Game 5 thanks to veteran Mark Stone's winning goal in overtime. Announcer Kenny Albert was on the call alongside his co-host Brian Boucher for NBC SN. And now it's on to our weekly poll question. You can vote on Instagram at Facebook at Sportstown_podcast or on Twitter at SportsTownPod. This week, once again, we have two questions. The first question is, will the Suns sweep the Nuggets? 60% of you said yes, and I actually have to admit I did vote on this as well, and I said yes, they will. However, this recording was done before Game 3, so it could go, the Nuggets could end up winning this game and make me look like a complete fool. But anyways, I think the Suns are going to win this. Currently are going to sweep it. Currently 60% of you said yes. The second question is, should Floyd Maywheather fight another celebrity like Logan Paul? 77% of you said no, which I totally agree. I think it's ruining boxing. Floyd Mayweather did not look that great, but he made a bunch of money, and Logan Paul somehow survived. I mean, I'm going to give some credit to him, but at the same time, it's like Floyd Mayweather. It seemed like both of them weren't trying, and they were just hugging in the ring and basically saying, oh, we're going to make a bunch of money. So unfortunately for those small guys and those guys that are actually real boxers and actually are really good and stuff like that, when they have these they have these fights like this, it's not going to go over well because everybody thinks, this sport isn't very, for the people that don't watch boxing a lot, they're not going to see, oh, wow, that's definitely something I want to watch. So it's a little disappointing, especially for those lower tier guys. But anyways, thanks again for voting. You can vote on Instagram and Facebook at SportsTown_podcast or on Twitter at SportsTownPod. And now on to the Sports Lightning Round, your biggest sports stories of the world from this week. LeBron James is switching his jersey number from 23 to 6. James wore number 6 in Miami when he won his first championships. The four-time league MVP helped the Heat win another championship in the next season when they defeated the Spurs in 7 games. The four-time Finals MVP left the Heat and went back to wearing his famous number 23 jersey in 2014 when he rejoined Cleveland. The former number 1 overall pick in 2003 kept his number 23 when he joined the Lakers in 2018. James intended to go back to number 6 in 2019 when the Lakers traded for star Anthony Davis. However, Nike did not approve of the switch, and therefore James could not switch his jersey number. However, Davis will keep his number 3 jersey despite James going to number 6. The 17-year veteran will also wear number 6 in his new film, Space Jam: A New Legacy. James also wore number 6 in the Olympics before playing for the Miami Heat from 2010 to 2014. Rudy Gobert has won his 3rd defensive MVP in 4 years. Rudy Gobert now joins only 3 other former NBA players who have won the award 3 times: Dikembe Mutombo, Ben Wallace, and Dwight Howard. Gobert helped lead the Jazz to the best record in the NBA this season at 52-20. The Frenchman received 84 first-place votes. Second was Ben Simmons, who had 15 first-place votes. Former Defensive Player of the Year Draymond Green finished 3rd in the voting. Gobert averaged 10 defensive rebounds a game and led the league in that category. He also led the league in blocks shots at 2.7. The 7-foot big man was drafted in 2013 by the Nuggets and traded the Jazz on the same night. Many Jazz fans are thankful that the organization traded for the unknown 7-foot Frenchman in 2013. The Nuggets also traded away Donovan Mitchell in 2017 to the Utah Jazz. It has been announced that the USA Basketball will hold their training camp in Las Vegas, Nevada before they travel to Tokyo, Japan for the 2020 Olympics. The defending Olympic champions, USA, will begin their training camp on July 6th to the 12th. San Antonio Spurs head coach Greg Popovich will coach the team, and Warriors coach Steve Kerr will be his assistant. Former Hawks coach Lloyd Pierce will also serve as an assistant. Jerry Colangelo will serve as the team's national managing director. 3 other countries will also hold their Olympic training camps in Las Vegas: Australia, Nigeria, and Spain. The country Australia will start their training camp this month. The women's national team will begin their training camp on July 12th. The WNBA break for the summer game starts on July 11th. LeBron James and Anthony Davis of the Lakers plan not to play in this year's Olympics. Such stars as Kawhi Leonard, Steph Curry, and Damian Lillard have thought about playing. The exhibition games begun July 10th and run through the 16th. The rich get richer. Dallas Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott has signed a 5-year deal with the Jordan brand. Prescott is now the first quarterback currently playing in the NFL to sign with the brand. The Cowboys quarterback left Adidas. He had been with Adidas since his rookie year. Earlier in the offseason, the former Mississippi State product signed a massive 4-year, $160 million deal with Dallas. He will also not have to ever be franchise tagged again. Prescott missed most of last season with an ankle injury that caused him to miss 12 games. The former 4th-round pick has moved past his injury and stated, "I have buried the injury, honestly, guys. From the point of just moving forward and going about my life, I buried it. I buried it mentally. And I think you guys and a lot of people around me have to help me bury it as well as we move forward." Cowboys open up the season versus the defending champion, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, on opening night, September 9th of the 2021 season. Denver Broncos safety Kareem Jackson stated on former NFL player Aqib Talib's podcast, Catching Fades, that Watson really wants to play for the Broncos. He stated, "I've got a relationship with Deshaun. I've been talking with him the past couple of weeks, man." He continued, "All he's been telling me is, look, Jack, just tell me that's where I want to be." He's like, "That's where I want to be." That's where I want to be in Denver. Currently, Denver has 3 quarterbacks on the roster: Teddy Bridgewater, Drew Lock, and Brent Rippon. Before the sexual allegations on Watson, the Clemson product was unhappy in Houston and had demanded a trade from the Texans. Most likely, Watson will be suspended if he can ever play in the league again. However, if the Texans do trade their superstar quarterback, Denver could be a good destination for the 3-time Pro Bowler. Breaking news in the NFL. Chiefs offensive guard Kyle Long has suffered a leg injury on the lower side and will miss the rest of OTAs, training camp, and most likely all of the preseason. Long just recently signed with the Chiefs this offseason after being retired the whole season of 2020. After getting injury, Long took to Twitter to share his thoughts. "I did everything I could to prepare to get back to football," Long said. "Zero regrets. I've been getting better every day and having so much fun with my new team. Focusing on controlling the things I can control. Yesterday was not one of those things. Thanks for the well wishes." If Long is still out for the beginning of the regular season, the Chiefs could turn to rookie Trey Smith at that position. The college football fans could get their wish about an expanding playoffs. First reported by Yahoo Sports' Pete Thamel, the CFP could expand from 6 teams to 12 teams. The new playoff format would feature the top 5 conference champions and 7 at-large bids. The top 4 seeds would have byes, and the rest would play 3 playoff games. However, the expansion would not happen until at least 2023. The new playoff format would likely include smaller schools in the AAC, Sun Belt, Mountain West, MAC, and others. However, the top 4 seeds will not play a home game and will play all their playoff games at a neutral site. Teams such as Notre Dame will not be able to have a top 4 seed because they would not be a conference champion, which most likely means that Notre Dame could be joining the ACC very soon, at least in football, because in every other sport they are in the ACC. The highest seed they could get would be a 5th seed. It was also reported that teams could play up to 17 games. The CFP deal does not end until the 2025/2026 season. Cincinnati Reds pitcher Sonny Gray has been placed on the 10-day IL. This is the second time that Gray has been placed on the IL this season. Gray said that he felt pain in his right groin on Tuesday and thought it would be best to not strain it. An MRI on Wednesday determined that the Reds pitcher would be out for a few starts. After Gray left the game on Thursday, he said, "I felt good. I felt in control. I was in a good spot. Then I just felt that I knew it that I wasn't. I wanted to continue to go, but in my head I was just trying to think, this is one of the worst moments that they always say, don't make it worse. Don't make it worse." Then that was it. The Reds are currently 29-31 and are 4th place in the NL Central. The 2020/2021 Hart Finalist Trophy Award have been announced. The finalist for the Hart Trophy Award has been announced. The Hart Trophy is awarded to the most outstanding player of the year in the NHL. No surprise, but Edmonton Oilers' Connor McDavid, Toronto Maple Leafs' Austin Matthews, and Colorado Avalanche Nathan MacKinnon. Oilers forward McDavid, is the clear favorite to win and scored 33 goals and 72 assists this season. McDavid is looking for his second Hart Trophy award. If McDavid takes home the award, the Oilers will be the first teams to have back-to-back Hart Trophy award winners since the Boston Bruins in 1968/69 and 69/70. Austin Matthews had a great season as well. Matthews led the league in scoring with 41 goals. The Arizona native became the first Maple Leaf to lead the league in goals since 1955. On the other side, MacKinnon is looking for his first Hart Trophy award. The Avalanche product has been nominated a few times for the award. In 2019/2020, he finished second place for the award. The 25-year-old had 20 goals and 45 assists this season. The award will be announced during the Stanley Cup playoffs. The 4-time NASCAR Cup Series champion and Hall of Famer Jeff Gordon could be leaving Fox Sports after 2021. Gordon, who has a small stake in Hendrick Motorsports, has expressed a desire to get back into the racing business. The news was first reported by Awful Announcing and Adam Stern from Sports Business. Gordon retired from full-time racing in 2015 and joined the Fox booth in 2016. However, this is not the first time that the 4-time NASCAR Cup Series champion has been rumored to leave Fox. According to a report done by Adam Stern, Gordon almost left after 2018, but decided to sign a multi-year deal contract with the network that he later described as a no-brainer. 3 years later, he might leave officially. Even Rick Hendrick stated that after he retires, he plans to give the ownership to the 93-time winner, Jeff Gordon. Fox Sports will air their last race of the season on Sunday at Texas Motor Speedway for the All-Star race. It could be Gordon's last time he calls a race. And now, on to our interviews with Jesse Head from the Heads Up Falcons podcast and Kyle Hoffman from the Pickle podcast.
Here we go.
All right, I'm pleased to be joined by a reoccurring guest, Jesse Head of the Heads Up Falcons podcast. How's it going, Jesse?
It's going good, man. It's going good.
All right, so let's start off with the big news on Sunday. Julio Jones was officially traded and to the Titans. Now, last time you came on, you said you really thought he'd go to the Titans. I thought he was going to probably the Patriots, but you were correct. What did you think of the trade?
I thought it was good. I thought it was exactly what we all thought was going to happen in the beginning. I think we all kind of thought Tennessee Titans were the front runner from the get-go with Derrick Henry and then being on the brink of a Super Bowl. So I thought it was exactly what we thought it was going to be from the get-go. Everything in between that you heard about all these other teams and a first-round draft pick and all those rumors that were possibly out there. Clearly, all that was just smoke and mirrors. And we got, it happened how we all thought it would be. And we cleared up the cap space that we needed to get. got a relatively high pick and a mid-rounder for it. So overall, I'm pretty happy with it.
All right, so the Titans have another weapon. They already have A.J. Brown. They have Derrick Henry. Now they add in Julio Jones. How well do you think they'll do next season? Because it looks like they're going to win the AFC South probably pretty easily.
Yeah, there's not much competition there. I think they have a solid team all around. I think the only question mark at this point is Ryan Tannehill. And I know that sounds crazy after having the 2 seasons that he's had in a row, but you just lost your genius-minded offensive coordinator. A lot of people like to give credit to Derrick Henry being there for Arthur Smith being able to run that offense, but Derrick Henry wasn't doing that before he got there. Ryan Tannehill wasn't the guy that he was before he got there. So I think they're going to be a good team. I think they'll win, and I think they'll probably make a run in the playoffs. They should make a run in the playoffs, but I do think a lot of that up in the air, or a lot of that is up in the air based off of what their offensive coordinator, their next offensive coordinator is going to do. A lot changes when you lose an offensive coordinator. Just ask Dan Quinn how it was when Kyle Shanahan left after we went to the Super Bowl. We were never the same team again. So that is, I think they'll do well next year. But the big question out there is their offense going to look the same under a different minded coach? So it all depends there, but I think they'll do well.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about Ryan Tannehill. I don't know if he's that good of a quarterback, but I think if you give him weapons like what Tennessee has done, he's going to do solid. I think last year he relied a little too much on Derrick Henry, but I mean, who wouldn't? I mean, Derrick Henry's a beast. Derrick Henry is probably the best running back in football right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so let's go on to Atlanta's side of the trade. It seemed pretty lopsided. All they got was a 2nd and a 4th round pick. Do you think they could have got more with another team, or?
No, I think that they got as much as they can out of the situation that, we were dealt with Julio. I mean, you got a perfect storm here. So with the leverage that you have in the position that we were in, you're talking about, number one, everybody knows we don't have any money. We talked about that the last time I was on your show. And, he didn't want to be here. So when he went on and talked to Shannon Sharp, and now it's coming out that he did not know that he was on there. So I'm a little bit shocked about that. And then with him being an older receiver and people being unsure about how much time that he truly does have left, I think you combine all those things, and I think that we got exactly what we need. A lot of people like to compare, well, we traded Sanu to the Patriots for a 2nd round pick. A lot of people like to forget that little thing happened there. But the only thing with that is that he didn't have a giant contract attached to his name. Stephon Diggs went for a 1st rounder as well. He got traded for a 1st rounder, but he's a younger guy and has a ton of potential ahead of him. You're trading a guy that we're just not so sure. He's kind of beat up. We don't know how serious that hamstring thing is, and it's consistent. It's been a consistent thing for if you're a diehard Falcons fan, you've seen him limping off the field for the past 4 years off and on. So with his age and all the other factors, us having no money and him not wanting to be here and wanting to be traded, I just feel like all of our leverage was pulled out from under us to get a 1st round draft pick. So is it what you wanted for the superstar wide receiver that you have on your team, the obvious future Hall of Famer? Absolutely not. You want to get a 1st rounder, but the reality is we were in a situation where we pretty much had to trade him, and this is as much as we could get. So given that situation, we got as much as we could for him. So you almost have to say, the Falcons got everything they could for him. So you have to look at that as a win. As a Falcons fan, outsiders are going to look in and say that it's not a win because you didn't get a 1st round for it. But when you combine all those factors, that's as much as we could get for him.
I was a little shocked that they only got a 2nd and 4th round pick. But as you mentioned earlier, and I read a lot of articles about it, how they just needed money and they were so desperate to trade him. And now again, Julio went out and said he wanted to be gone. So teams, I think at the same time took advantage of that. So
perfect storm.
Yeah. Let's stay with the Atlanta side for a little bit here. I think you mentioned it last time you came on, but do you think Calvin Ridley can be the number 1 guy while that Julio is gone?
I think he can definitely be the number one guy. Now, is he going to be Julio? Is he going to is he going to replace Julio? I don't think so. I don't think anybody is ever going to replace a talent like that. But he can be Calvin Ridley, and Calvin Ridley is a number one receiver. The stats prove it. I mean, the guy had 1,300 yards last year in a season. You know, a lot of people, all the attention was on Julio. He had 1,300 yards and 9 touchdowns in a year that Julio Jones only played 8 games. So the games that he didn't play, I think I saw the stats earlier. I did not write those down, but I believe he had like 660 yards and 4 touchdowns with Julio not playing in the game. So, I mean, in 8 games, that's pretty good. You multiply that, you're looking at a 1,300-yard season and 8 touchdowns. You know, so I mean, that's a wide receiver one. The statistics that you want to have there. And then with Kyle Pitts and this, 11 personnel that we're going to, this 1-1 personnel that we're going to be running with 2 tight ends on the field and the play action and everything, I think Calvin Ridley can certainly step up and be a number one wide receiver in Atlanta. You know, a lot of people there's this illusion because we had Julio for so long. It's hard for any Falcons fan to imagine that we could move forward without him. You know what I mean? It's hard. Like we're not going to win without Julio is kind of the mindset that people have. But look at the past 4 years. Have we been winning with him? So, I mean, there's a lot of teams in the NFL that are winning without a Julio Jones on their team. So I'm not on the side of hitting the panic button because we lost Julio. Trust me, I wanted to keep him if we could. I just never saw that as a possibility. But I certainly think that we can be successful, and I definitely think Calvin Ridley is going to have a good, strong, and long career here in Atlanta.
Who do you think will have a better season this year or this upcoming year? AJ Brown or Julio Jones?
Gosh, man, this is a tough question. That's a tough question. I struggle with this one. I'm not going to lie. It's hard to say because you've got, Ryan Tannehill and AJ Brown have this chemistry already. And it's crazy to look at this. I was looking up his stats, but AJ Brown he's been in the league 2 years. His first year, he had 1,000 yards. His second year, last year, he had 1,000 yards, and he had 11 touchdowns last year. That dude's going to be a superstar. I mean, those are for the first 2 years in the NFL. That guy is going to be. He's about to step into absolute stardom, and now he's got one of the best receivers of all time on his team. I think that Julio should have the bigger year, but I don't think it's going to be by much. I think they're going to be right beside each other, kind of like a Arizona back in the day when they had Larry Fitzgerald and Anquan Bolden on the same team. They were just always right there neck and neck with one another. I think it's going to be a similar situation like that. But I think they're going to try to feed and use Julio as much as possible with the question mark of him and how long he's going to be able to play. So I think that, and I think he's going to, I think he's got a great year left in him, possibly 2 great years left in him. So I think that he'll have the bigger year, but I don't think it'll be maybe by 100 yards. And I don't think he'll have more touchdowns than AJ Brown.
Yeah. I mean, I'm so shocked right now. The Titans have so much weapons, AJ Brown, Julio Jones, and they got Derrick Henry. So
it's scary if they can put it together if the offensive coordinator that they have step up. I don't even know who it is, but if he can put all those pieces together, you're looking at a Super Bowl contender for sure.
And we've kind of talked about this a little bit already, but if Ryan Tannehill, he's got so many weapons now. If he doesn't perform well this year, will it look bad on the former Texas A&M product?
Yeah, it'll definitely look bad at him, but he doesn't, with the offensive scheme that they're going for, I mean, he's not going to go out there. I don't think he's going to go out there and have, 38 touchdowns and under, 10 picks. I think it'll be more around that 30 mark and, probably 9 picks, something like that. I don't think they're going to both these receivers are going to go out there and have 1,500 yards or anything crazy like that because they're going to feed Derrick Henry. So I don't, obviously he needs to take them deep into the playoffs. I don't think it's truly like a matter of stats or having to have an MVP season per se. I don't think he's going to go out there and have, Patrick Mahomes numbers or anything like that. But I think the judgment for him is how far can you take these guys into the playoffs? And I think that will define his success as the quarterback there.
I think Ryan Tannehill is a good quarterback. I just don't think he's a great quarterback, but with the weapons and the team he has around him, and there's still question marks on the Titans defense, but I think if he's going to have a MVP type of season for him to look, good, because again, he's got so many options now.
Yeah.
What do you think is more realistic? The Titans making the Super Bowl or making it in the playoffs as a wild card, losing in the first round?
Probably, I'd say winning the Super Bowl. I mean, at this point, you have to have that. I think you have to have that idea in your head with the weapons that they have and the overall team that they have and the success that they've had. I think they're more likely to win a Super Bowl than they are to lose in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, and it seems like they have such a talented roster. Again, I keep on harping on this, but their team is so stacked, and I feel like they should easily win the AFC South.
Yeah.
The Colts are going to be solid, but I think at the same time, I'm just not sure how well Carson Wentz is going to do this year. I think he's going to do good, but now again, I just think the Titans should be able to easily win. I think there's more of a chance of them making the Super Bowl as well. Yeah. Let's go back to Atlanta side. Their team isn't terrible. The team looks pretty solid, to be honest. Get Calvin Ridley, Kyle Pitts, still Matt Ryan is there. Mm-hmm. Do you think and you said earlier or last time you came on, you thought they'd go 10-7. Mm-hmm. Do you think the offense will have to carry them this year, or do you think the defense will step up this season?
I think the offense needs to be your strong point, obviously. I don't think the defense is so much, I think the offense, to answer your question, yes. I think they'll have to carry the team, being the stronger point of the two, offense and defense. But I think that our defense is not as much of a scare because of the caliber of teams that we're playing. We have third easiest schedule out of the entire NFL. We're playing a lot of weak quarterbacks, and Dean Pease does a lot of blitzing. And one of the things with young quarterbacks and rookie quarterbacks and the weaker quarterbacks in the NFL is when you put pressure on them, they're not that good. We have four rookie quarterbacks. We're playing Jalen Hurts. Ryan Fitzpatrick is one of the quarterbacks we're playing, Tua Tagovailoa, and Sam Darnold. You look at that and you're sitting there just counting wins when you start hearing names like that of the quarterbacks, four rookie quarterbacks, and then those other four quarterbacks are some of the weak quarterbacks that you're playing. So I think our schedule kind of gives some relief to our defense, but I certainly think that our offense is going to be the strong point of the team.
Yeah, that team. The team still looks solid. Again, as I mentioned earlier, they have guys like Kyle Pitts. They still have Calvin Ridley. I think Matt Ryan's going to have a solid season, even though a lot of people right now don't think that's going to be they don't think Matt Ryan's going to have as good of a season. And when you came on last time as well, you mentioned that, Matt Ryan is better than people want to give him credit for. And I think a lot of people are still, disappointed at him for, not being able to close out the Patriots in Super Bowl 51. Do you think there's a chance that if the Falcons can't do well this year, they'll try to get rid of Matt Ryan and try to just rebuild with the new quarterback?
Not this year. No. I think that if we had a horrible year and you're picking in the top 5 again, then you're probably taking a quarterback, but Matt Ryan's still going to be there. Would we bench him? I don't know, maybe. But there's still some time left on that contract. So the reason that he's still here, and if he was on the back end of his contract, last year of his contract, then I would say absolutely. But the numbers that we have right now that are on his contract, there's no way you're not, you're moving on from him right now. And if Arthur Smith made Ryan Tannehill look good, so if he can make him look good, I feel confident that he can do those type of things with Matt Ryan. A lot of people, his big weakness is not his decision making. It's not his, accuracy. It's anything like that. The big knock on him is his deep ball. And there's a lot of quarterbacks right now that don't have a deep ball that are really, really good. One just won the Super Bowl. His name's Tom Brady. So I think that given that, I think that, I think we can be a successful team. I think Matt Ryan can be successful out there with this, with the offensive weapons that we have. So, I feel confident moving forward with him. I don't think that we're going to move on from him anytime soon in the sense of, 2-3 years or anything like that. I think that again, unless we pick in the top 5 or something like that, we might draft a quarterback. But I don't think that's happening unless we are picking in the top 5. So,
how many more years do you think Julio Jones has left in the tank?
I would say 2 good. I'd say 2 really good years, and then 3 solid years after that. I don't think he's going to go and lead the NFL in receiving yards and touchdowns or anything like that, ever again. It's possible. If he's going to do it, it's going to be next year with him, given a ton of just risking his body and everything he has on the line. But one of the things that he has to do, or all veteran receivers have to do when they get at this point in their career, is conserve their body and make sure that they're taking care of themselves. And that means taking some games off when you're beat up. He cannot continue to go out there and play injured, play with a pulled hamstring, play with turf toe, and all the things that he's been doing, throughout his 10 years with the Atlanta Falcons. At some point, he has to start taking some of the load off of himself. And that, again, that's one of the reasons that, we're not getting a first round for a guy like that, because those are the questions that are up there. But I think he has 2 really good years left, especially with being in a run-first offense. I mean, they're not going to be relying on Julio Jones to get down the field. They've got other options, plenty of other options out there. So I think he's got 2 really good years left, and then 2 to 3 solid years after that.
I don't think, and you mentioned his durability, I don't think he's going to play all 17 games now that the league went from 16 to 17. But How many games do you think he'll play this upcoming season?
I think he'll miss 4 games. I think he's healthy right now, and he says that he's healthy. I mean, everybody says that they're healthy, but they're watching him work out before they're trading for him, right? They're making sure that their guy, if they're going to give a 2nd and 4th rounder for him, they're making sure that when they get him there, he's going to be able to. He's going to be healthy when he walks in the door at minimum. So I think he'll miss, around 4 games, and that's being with a winning team. They're not having to rely on him. They're not going to be in a situation where they're going to have to play, all their starters towards the back end of the season, and they're getting every single rep out there. I think they're going to be a winning team. They're going to be able to give some guys some time off that are kind of beat up. So I could see him, missing possibly 4 games.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, as we've seen for the last few years with Julio Jones, he hasn't been able to play all 16 games. And now with the league going from an extra game, I mean, it's it's not possible, I think, for him to play all 17 games. I feel like with the league going to more games, we could see a lot more load management the way they've done in the NBA recently.
That's a good point.
Players doing load management. Speaking of load management, do you think there'll be more teams resting players and not playing all 17 games, even if they're not hurt?
I think so. Yeah. When you get to the back end, like if you got like a team like the Chiefs that are going to go out there and could potentially go, get towards the back end of the season to be 12-1, 13-1, and you've got a clear, shot at the playoffs, and there's no point in, you got home field advantage and all those different things like that. There's no point in you playing all these players. I think that's a huge possibility. That's a really good point. Honestly, I'm happy that you said that, because I haven't thought about that. How this extra game could really change things, because a 16-game season, people were freaking out about a 16-game season and their bodies getting beat up. So at this point, I could certainly see something like that, especially for the teams that have a clear lane to the playoffs.
And I don't think this is very likely, at least not for now, but do you think there'll be quarterbacks that will just do load management?
Yeah, absolutely. Patrick Mahomes certainly doing that. A guy like Aaron Rodgers, if he even gets out there. Tom Brady. I mean, those are guys that are, all those big names like that have so, Russell Wilson, guys that have so much money tied in, and hell, I think the coaches are probably going to push for that. You get to the back end of the season and you've already clinched your division and have home field advantage, and you've got 2 games left. Are you truly wanting to play, your superstar, quarterback that's, you've got hundreds of millions of dollars tied into? Most people aren't going to want to do that. So I think, absolutely, a ton of quarterback sitting towards the back end of the season for sure.
You just mentioned Aaron Rodgers, and I think there's a lot of different takes on Aaron Rodgers at the moment. Mm-hmm. Do you think he'll go back to Green Bay, or do you think there's a good chance that he'll just rest this whole season and not play at all?
Oh man, I don't know. That's tough. Charles Barkley was on our local radio station here for the Atlanta Falcons and was talking about him and said that he kind of seems like the kind of like a girlfriend that you got to keep reminding her that she's pretty. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what it's like there. That he just wants to hear so much that look, you're the man, you're the man, you're the man. And I get it though. I mean, the guy has not gotten the support that he deserves there. I mean, you're not going to go out there and give that guy, try to draft that guy some weapons, some, offensive, some tight end, receiver, give him something, try to go out there and give him some weapons to work with. But I think that he'll play in the end. I'm not completely sure. I don't pay attention too much to those, but usually, a guy that's been with the team that long, usually these stories end with him eventually showing up there, towards as we get closer to the season, but not sure. But usually it ends with them being out there in the end.
I think there's a better chance of Aaron Rodgers just staying put, because if he wants to go to a different team, we all know the Packers aren't going to trade him unless something drastic happens. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you look at it, I guess the Broncos and Raiders would make the most sense, but I feel like they would have to trade so much for Rodgers. Their team wouldn't be great. And the Broncos and Raiders are both just average at the moment. And I think it's not a good, I mean, I think the best team for him to win right now is the Packers. So I guess we'll see what ends up happening. But right now there's so many fans split on the whole thing. It's crazy. And
he may just go run Jeopardy, man. Have you seen those? Have you heard all the offers that he potentially got per se to run Jeopardy, like $100 million contract or something like that?
I had no idea that he got $100 million offer. I know he really likes doing it. And I think before all this started happening, I think he said he wouldn't mind doing both, which I wouldn't be surprised if he did both. So, alrighty. So do you think, let's go back to the Atlanta side of things. Do you think the Falcons will sign another quality veteran receiver before the season starts?
I do not think that they will do that at this point, because you've already gotten, you went and got rid of a big time veteran wide receiver that you had a bunch of money tied into. And one of the reasons we've been pigeonholed with defense and offensive line and being able to go out there and get other people is because we had so much money tied up into our skilled positions in our receivers. So I don't think you get rid of him and then go assign another guy, especially when you have a number one receiver like a Calvin Ridley. I think at this point, if you have money to play with, you try to go defense, possibly address some of the weaker points of your defense, like a cornerback or maybe another pass rusher or something like that. Maybe some safety depth or something. You don't go and that's another way just to really piss off the fan base is you go and cut somebody like that and then try to go bring in a veteran wide receiver that's not even close to or near as good as Julio ever was and is not going to fill that hole. So I think you kind of keep the offense where it is. And we did, I think, right when all that stuff was being talked about with Julio Jones after the Shannon Sharp situation, we went out and signed a former receiver that was at the Tennessee Titans when Arthur Smith was there. So we kind of filled that slot, if you will, that was open or that was going to be open for with Julio Jones being gone. So if there's money left over after you sign the draft class, or I think there may be a little bit, I think you try to put that into the defense or possibly the offensive line.
All right, as we wrap up the interview, and again, thanks so much for coming on last second notice, Jesse. Mm-hmm. So can you talk, we know about your podcast, but can you tell us more about your most recent episode and what you have in store for the future?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Obviously, we've got, things are ramping up for football. You got Julio Jones trades happening and training camp and a lot of other different new things with the Falcons, new offensive scheme, new defensive scheme, and just a lot of different things going on that we that are new for Atlanta Falcons fans. So we'll be talking about all those things. I think the next episode I'm going to try to aim towards is talk a little bit about OTAs and training camp and how those things are coming up and how they're going. And then definitely get into Arthur Smith's offensive scheme and how our players are going to be working into that. So try to dig into the details, kind of learning like episodes, if you will, digging into the X's and O's of the team and how I think our players are going to work into it. So you can find us on any podcast platform, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, in any podcast platform that you want to listen on, and we'll be on there.
All right. Thanks for so much for coming on, Jesse. Again, as he mentioned earlier, you can find his podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or iHeartRadio. You can also follow him on Instagram at Atlanta Falcons Podcast. Again, thanks for coming on, Jesse. I love talking football, especially the NFL. And now that the season's starting to get ramped up a little, we're closer, at least 2 months from preseason. So again, thanks for coming on, Jesse.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, brother.
All right, I am pleased to be joined by a reoccurring guest from the Pickle podcast, Kyle Hoffman. How's it going, Kyle?
It's going awesome. I've had a heck of a day, but I have quite enough energy to talk about the UFC right now, so I'm pumped. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. Always enjoy talking about the UFC, especially tomorrow night. That's a huge event. Of course, at the time of this recording, it was Friday night. So before we start with the UFC, we had a fight that happened last week between Floyd Mayweather and Logan Paul. The fight didn't exactly go as everybody was expecting it to go. What did you think of the fight, and did you think it was a waste to watch?
Well, I just want to start out by saying that I truly believe that there was a no knockout contract on that fight. I did see the footage where Floyd was holding up Paul. He says he didn't get knocked out. However, the evidence is kind of clear to me that there was a rigged fight. I knew that coming in, that this was probably going to be some type of agreement fight, extra stuff in the contract that would affect the fight. I did have Mayweather winning that fight in before 8 rounds, but it ended up going the distance. I was really surprised that Floyd didn't knock him out at the end because their trainers were actually talking to Logan Paul, and they told him that Floyd's going to turn it on in the later rounds. So he ended up doing that and didn't finish Paul, which I thought was a win for Paul. And I think it sealed his legacy as a somewhat legitimate boxer. And I hope that he gets another opponent, maybe not as good as Floyd, but I really hope that he gets another decent opponent and can show us what he can do, because I liked what he did against Mayweather, but he's got to keep his hands up. He's got to keep his hands up. So that's my advice to him.
Well, the first round, Logan Paul looked pretty good, but then after the first round, he looked super tired, I remember, and he was just like basically hugging Floyd Mayweather the rest of the rounds. And I thought the same thing too, because Floyd Mayweather did the same thing when he fought Conor McGregor. He just kind of waited around, and then like the 7th or 8th round, that's when he went ham on him and finally had technically a technical knockout. But let's see here, did it look worse for Floyd Mayweather since he wasn't able to knock out Logan Paul?
I think it did look worse for Mayweather as far as what he did in the first round, because being that I think it was a rigged fight, I didn't think Mayweather was even trying to hurt Paul in the first round because he knew that was going to lose all the pay-per-view money. However, I don't think Mayweather cares. He's money magic Mayweather, whatever he wants to call himself. As long as he gets that money, he doesn't care. He's probably just lucky he didn't actually catch one of those Logan Paul right hooks coming in. So he actually did get popped with a few of those.
Yeah, I mean, we got to give credit to Logan Paul, but at the same time, Floyd Mayweather, you're one of the greatest boxers of all time. I understand Logan Paul's a lot bigger than you, but you have to get a knockout at least in the later rounds. But that's boxing, basically.
Yeah.
So
Floyd did not look the same, though. I think you can agree. He did not look like he did in his last fight versus McGregor. It looked like he had been, ordering some takeout. But he was still looking good at the end. He still had that power punching and that speed that Mayweather has. He's just as fast as he's always been, and I wouldn't be surprised if he fought again in the near future, honestly.
I think if it really depends on how much money he would get, and I think if he would get enough money, I think he would definitely consider it. Let's jump on to another Paul. Of course, I think before the fight happened, Jake Paul agreed to fight Tyron Woodley. Woodley is no longer associated with the UFC, so he can kind of do his own fights as of now. Who do you like in this matchup, and could you see Tyron Woodley getting a knockout over Jake Paul?
I can see Tyron Woodley getting a knockout over Jake Paul. I think there's actually bad blood there between those two. That's real. I've seen it. I've felt it. I've seen their face-offs, and I think I'll give all the credit to Jake Paul that he's ready to step in and face a real opponent. All the credit in the world to him. However, he probably didn't want to say what he said to Woodley before this fight got agreed to, because I think Woodley's going to go in there with a vengeance. Now, if you look at Woodley's past, though, as far as Chael Sonnen commented, Chael Sonnen said that, Woodley has to be careful going in there, and he has to decisively finish Paul. He has to take this seriously, or else Paul could come back and win that fight. I'm not sure that Paul would specifically get the knockout against Woodley, since Woodley is kind of hard to knock out. But I think Jake Paul could win this fight if Tyron Woodley does not take it seriously. And knowing Tyron Woodley's past and the way that Dana White's had opinions about Tyron Woodley's behavior, I'm not so sure he's going to take it seriously. I think he's angry. I think he wants Paul to be embarrassed, but I'm not so sure he's actually taking Paul seriously. So I will be tuning in for this fight. This is going to be a great fight.
I'm excited as well, but I'm kind of disappointed because I wanted Jake Paul to fight a real boxer like a Tommy Fury, but obviously that's not going to happen. Tyron Woodley, we all know he's a great striker, but I'm still kind of with you. I don't know if he's going to take it seriously enough. And I think even Joe Rogan said that Tyron Woodley could get knocked out. You think Jake Paul could knock him out? I mean,
if he takes him into later rounds, he could absolutely knock him out. Jake Paul does have power. And I said that before the Ben Askren fight. I said, if he connects with Askren, it's just like Robbie Lawler hitting him at the end of his career. So yeah, it's totally possible. The only thing is you have to watch out for the fight promoters and what they're doing. So be sure to stay tuned in the weeks coming up to the fight and see if you can figure anything out about if you think this fight's going to go a certain way, because I truly believe that they have certain things in the contracts with these fights. And I think if I was to give you betting advice on this fight, which I don't generally like to do on these type of fights, I would bet on Jake Paul winning the fight.
Okay.
That's where the money's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still not sure where I want to go on that yet. I think we still have 2.5 months, so I think I'm going to wait until later just because I'm not exactly sure what we're going to see from both fighters. I am a little worried that Tyron Woodley is older too, so that could be a factor as well.
Absolutely.
Like, he's got 4 straight losses, and his last win came in 2018. So
yeah, and I think that actual pure boxer has a better chance to defeat Jake Paul than Woodley does. Woodley has great boxing, but he is also a lot shorter, and he does like to rely on those haymaker punches. I think Jake Paul is going to come out early, and he's going to come jabbing Woodley, and he's going to piece Woodley up early. It's up to Woodley to decide if he wants to take that fight into his own hands.
It's definitely going to be an exciting fight, and I can't wait to watch on August 28th. I think that fight is now on Showtime, so I'm pretty excited for that. All right, so let's get on to UFC 263. Let's start with the main card. We're just going to go with the main card for now. Let's start off with the first fight, Paul Craig versus Jamal Hill. You were talking about earlier, you like Hill in this matchup. Why is that?
I like Hill in this matchup because he's one of those prototype fighters who's going to come in with a long reach. He's going to be really quick, and he's going to fight off Paul Craig with his jabs. Now, what I was talking with you about earlier, Paul Craig does pose somewhat of a danger to Jamal Hill in that he likes to walk through punches and is great at finishing opponents after doing that. So Jamal Hill has to make sure to keep his distance from Paul Craig. Don't get too aggressive with Paul Craig. Take him down, wear him out, bleed him into later rounds, and that's how you're going to win against Paul Craig. If Jamal Hill tries to get the early knockout against Paul Craig, he could absolutely do that. However, he does take a risk because Paul Craig is a great a great 1 and 2 round finisher.
So do you think the Scotsman can get the victory here? And do you think the only way that he can get the win is by knockout?
I think that he may be able to knock Jamal Hill out on the ground if he gets him down. Paul Craig's great at ground and pound, and I think he's going to be trying to go for those leg takedowns and get the ground and pound in this fight. It's up to Jamal Hill to try to avoid that, keep his distance, like I said. But in the end, I just don't think Paul Craig's going to be able to get it done. Jamal Hill has pretty good ground defense for how long he is, and I just think that Jamal Hill is going to take this fight. I think that Paul Craig may last 2 or 3 rounds, but I don't see Paul Craig winning this fight.
Let's go on. Before we start with the other fight on the card, you were talking about earlier that Hill is similar to a John Jones / Adesanya, the way he fights and stuff like that. If he gets the win, who do you think would be his next challenger? And when do you think he can challenge for the light heavyweight title?
Yeah, I think Johnny Walker or Anthony Smith. Johnny Walker is currently ranked 10th, I think, on the light heavyweight, and Anthony Smith is 4. I think it's more likely that Dana White would want to make a matchup with Johnny Walker, just because those two fighters against each other, it's going to make for an exciting bout. And it's a good way for him to crack into the top 10 without having to go after Smith, who I think is overrated in that division.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an exciting match, and this is definitely a very good card, to be honest with you, when you have two two championship bouts. So this is going to be pretty exciting. So we'll go to our next matchup: Damian Maia versus Bilal Muhammad. Who do you like in this matchup?
I don't like either of the fighters in this matchup. This is one of those fights. I think that on every single card, there's one of them. You have older Damian Maia still trying to compete at his age versus a Bilal Muhammad who's come into his prime. So I like the matchup in the sense of views and pay-per-view money, because I think this is going to be a fun fight. It's hard telling what's going to happen. I think that if I was to put my money down, and I hate to say this, but if I was to put my money down, I would take Bilal Muhammad in this fight, because the only way Damian Maia is going to win this fight is if he backpacks Bilal Muhammad. So your money bet is Damian Maia, but your safe bet is Bilal Muhammad.
What's next for both fighters?
It's hard to tell down in those ranks who Dana White would want to have face, but at welterweight, we could actually jump around and look at some different things here. So if I go to welterweight rankings, okay, so as far as the welterweight rankings, Bilal Muhammad is at number 12 right now. And Damian Maia is at number 9. Again, I think Damian Maia is overrated. I would rank Bilal Muhammad above him. But I do think that Jorge Masvidal might be needing an opponent sometime soon to kind of come back from where he went. So I think Jorge Masvidal might be wanting that fight just so he can get an easy one and get back in the win column. Also, haven't seen Michael Chiesa in a while either. I wouldn't put anybody else above him against any of those two guys, but I think those are two good opponents. Possibly Salikov as well. Salikov just won in decisive fashion. So I think that maybe if Bilal Muhammad wins, I think a fight that would be great to see would be him versus Salikov, a kickboxer versus a wrestler and mauler. It would be a great matchup.
I was definitely not expecting Masvidal, but as you mentioned, he's had back-to-back losses to Usman, so I guess he would need someone to fight. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with him now that he's such a fan favorite, but of course he's lost. He's already got 15 losses and he's getting up there, so we'll see what happens.
If Damian Maia backpacks Bilal Muhammad and chokes him out, we could see a Ben Askren 2 type rematch with Masvidal, and I'm not joking. But it's all up to speculation at this point. It's fun to think about. It's probably not going to happen with Masvidal, but it's something that I would love to see.
All right, let's jump on to I guess it would be a tri-main event, technically not really, but so Leon Edwards versus Nate Diaz. Diaz is back. He's the heavy underdog in this matchup. I'm assuming you have Edwards in this fight.
I have Edwards in this fight, and I will say that there's a couple different ways Edwards could win this fight. And there's about 2 ways Nate Diaz could win this fight. Now, if you remember back when Jorge Masvidal actually got into a fight with Leon Edwards backstage, they were actually supposed to be on track to fight, which I would have loved to see. And then you saw what Jorge Masvidal did to Nate Diaz. So if I do a little comparing in my brain here, I know that I thought Leon Edwards might have been a decent opponent for Masvidal, being that he was longer and had some striking power. And you saw what Masvidal did to Diaz. I think Diaz is probably going to get pieced up in the first couple of rounds, but if he survives, he could take Leon Edwards out late rounds. I mean, this is one of those fights that if Leon Edwards is going to win it, it has to be an early finish, or he's got to go the distance with Nate Diaz, because if you get Nate Diaz past 3 rounds, he's going to find a way to box you up, get in your face, wear you out, and choke you out. And that may very well happen. Your money fight in this bet is Nate Diaz. Your safe bet is Leon Edwards.
This is probably a huge no, but do you think Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor will ever fight again?
If Nate Diaz wins this fight against Leon Edwards, an up and coming welterweight who's approaching the top of the division, I can see it. I could see it. Yeah.
Yeah, because we've seen him already fight twice. I think McGregor won both times, correct? Or was it just once? I think it was twice, though, wasn't it?
No, McGregor lost the first one, and then he came back and won the second one by decision. Now, that's why people want to see the trilogy, because he's never finished Diaz. I think McGregor would love to try to finish Diaz, and I think Diaz, the only thing with Diaz is I don't think he would want to fight McGregor again unless there was a lot of money involved. So it is possible. He doesn't like McGregor. The thing about this is if Nate Diaz wins in decisive fashion, it's Nate Diaz mania all over again. And then Conor McGregor is going to tweet him, and it's going to be a thing. So get ready. If Nate Diaz wins this fight, Conor McGregor is going to be all over social media talking that smack.
That's going to be definitely fun, but I think McGregor first had to take care of Dustin Poirier, which I don't think he's going to, but it would be, I can't wait for that fight too.
Well, hold on. You want to talk about that, JJ?
We can. Yep.
So I actually thought that, I was imagining the trilogy, and I was kind of, playing it back in my head, and I had a chance to look at some behind the scenes stuff with McGregor. The main thing that I noticed about McGregor is that he's suffering from that ring rust. You made all your money, you got your millions of dollars, and then you come back and you don't have the same mentality. You're the same fighter, but you're not going in with the same approach or the same strategy that you did before. I think losing to Dustin Poirier is going to somehow light a fire under Conor McGregor. I've seen him working out with the heavy bags much more often. I think that he's going to beef up and put some more muscle on for Poirier. Because he's not going to be able to just rely on his speed to beat Poirier anymore. He's going to have to use some wrestling, and he's going to have to use some close in the clinch, power punch style melee attacks, sort of like what he did to Donald Cerrone. If Conor McGregor goes into that fight like he did against Donald Cerrone, he could win.
Yeah, that's a huge possibility. I just think with the way we saw last time between Poirier and McGregor, it was just Poirier dominated him. And in my opinion, I still think Poirier is the best fighter in the lightweight division.
At this time, I agree with you 100%. Yeah. And you are right in that fashion. Poirier dominated that fight. I will also say that McGregor didn't have much of a chance to come back because he was finished by Poirier. But then that more credit to Poirier for getting that done.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited for that one. Let's go on to the co-main event between Deiveson Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno. Who do you like in that matchup?
Well, I'm getting out my PS5 this weekend because I'm going for the God of War, baby. The Deiveson Figueiredo, I think, is going to win this fight. He's got something to prove against Moreno. He's really mad that Moreno talked all that smack last time about him being sick and doubted that he was actually sick for that fight. But one thing I was talking to you with earlier, JJ, is that Figueiredo had power punches late in that fight, even though it went to decision. So Figueiredo's cardio is not going to come into play, I don't think, here. And I think that's where Moreno's tried to beat him last time. He tried to take him into deeper rounds and drown him with his wrestling. I don't think it's going to happen again. It's not going to happen because Deiveson Figueiredo is A, stronger than Brandon Moreno, and B, he knows what's coming. So look for Figueiredo to throw some wild head kicks, spinning back fists, might even jump off the cage. Who knows? But Figueiredo is going to be pulling out all the stops out on this one. I believe that he has a plan for Moreno, and I think Moreno is going into this fight with a plan that is not going to work.
Deiveson Figueiredo is one of the greatest flyweight fighters in UFC history. If he somehow loses this fight, which it doesn't look like he's going to, but if he loses this fight, would that hurt his legacy a little bit?
Absolutely. If he loses to Brandon Moreno, it could hurt his legacy because, again, he was never able to finish Moreno. And then if he loses to Moreno again, it's going to be hard to make quality pay-per-view fights with Deiveson Figueiredo after he loses to Moreno. Dana White wants to put Figueiredo up against the best guys in the division. And I think that if he loses, I think it's just, Dana White's not going to like that. And I think he's going to have to take a couple tin can fights to get back to where he wants to go. Not tin can fights, but he's going to have to take some lower opponents to get back after he loses to Moreno if he does.
Yeah, but I think at the end of the day, I think, like I said, you think Figueiredo is going to get it done pretty quickly. Of course, the last time they fought was a draw. It was one of the first times in UFC history. So I'm definitely excited for that fight as well. That's definitely going to get a lot of views on that one.
Oh yeah.
So let's go to the main event between Israel Adesanya versus Marvin Vettoria. As the second time they're fighting. I'm assuming you've got Adesanya, but you kind of were a little hesitant before we started the interview. What do you think about this fight, and do you think it goes the distance?
When I think about these type of fights, these championship events against a solid champion who's proven himself time and time again, coming off a loss, versus Vettori, who's been on a absolute tear and is anxious to get back in there with Adesanya. I had a chance to analyze some of their attitudes. I watched the Embedded series, and Adesanya's acting like his normal self, talking smack, making jokes, talking to the camera and stuff. So I do see a little bit of hesitation and anger in Adesanya, though. I think that he is annoyed by Marvin Vettori, and I think that may play into this fight as far as Israel Adesanya's strategy. It's either going to help end the fight quickly, or it's going to be what gets Adesanya in trouble. He's got to go in there emotionless. Marvin Vettori knows how to poke people's buttons and get in your face. He keeps calling him buddy. You remember when Vettori got into a verbal argument with another fighter at a hotel a year ago? He really knows how to get in people's heads. And I think that on fight night, Vettori is going to be really intense and Adesanya is going to be real quiet because he's going to want to take care of business. This is going to be, it might be a boring fight, guys. Just because Adesanya is going to not want to get taken down by Vettori, and Vettori is going to be wanting to take Adesanya down because he thinks that's a winning strategy. So it might be a boring fight. However, I do have money on Adesanya ending this fight early or going the distance against Vettori and winning again. I don't see Vettori winning this fight by anything other than the decision, unless he gets the takedown and is able to ground and pound Adesanya. In the end, guys, I think it's going to be another 5-round decision, to be honest.
If Vettori does end up winning, does that make him a household name in the UFC at least?
If Vettori wins, the whole country of Italy is going to explode, and we're going to hear about it for months. I think he's going to become a superstar just because, there's not a huge market in Italy, but there's really there's never been an Italian champion. So the memes are going to come out. You know what I mean? He's going to be meme famous if he wins. And I think he's going to be, he's definitely going to be a bigger star than he is now. I hope he wins because I'd like to see Adesanya maybe get a little lesson learned maybe about going up to fight Blachowicz and coming down and underestimating an opponent possibly. But yeah, I'm rooting for Vettori to win this fight because I want to see that happen. However, I just don't think Adesanya is going to let it happen.
Well, I mean, you mentioned Italy's not much of a big UFC or MMA market, but I don't think Ireland was much of an MMA market until Conor McGregor, and that they exploded. And McGregor is one of the most polarizing UFC fighters in history now.
Yeah, and Italians stick together just like Irish people stick together. They're very family oriented, and Vittori's got a lot of connections in Italy, and he knows a lot of people. He knows a lot of famous people too. So if Marvin Vettori wins, expect a lot of hoopla. We'll expect a lot of excitement.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited as well. I can't wait. Better get the popcorn out. It's gonna be a fun night, that's for sure. So let's go to the future. We already talked a little bit about the UFC 264 versus McGregor and Poirier, but is there any other fights on that card that you really want to see and can't wait to watch?
I'm really excited for the Tai Tuivasa versus Greg Hardy fight, JJ. Greg Hardy needs to prove himself against somebody like Tai Tuivasa to solidify his place in that division. He's sort of a black sheep in there. Some people don't take him seriously. However, Tai Tuivasa has been known to get knocked out by heavier, strong-handed opponents. And he's been beaten a few times. He has improved the last couple fights. In fact, I think he just had a victory a while back, but this is going to be a very fun fight to watch. Two strikers who love to just get in their opponent's face, and they both have good ground games as well. Greg Hardy's going to come in probably heavier in this fight. I actually have Greg Hardy possibly winning this fight, guys.
It's kind of crazy how the evolution of Greg Hardy in the MMA. Of course, at one time he was a football player playing for the Cowboys and the Panthers and stuff like that. And it's kind of crazy how much he's gotten to become such a big. I mean, he's the co-main event, right?
Yeah, he's doing well. I mean, he's basically the poor man's Brock Lesnar of our time. He's a mauler. He comes from a different sport. He's much bigger than the other opponents. He's got that professional athlete physicality that Brock Lesnar had. He's one of those monsters, man. So watch out for Greg Hardy to come in and get better and better and better.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited. It's definitely exciting for what he's done in his career. Of course, if he can continue his success in the MMA, it would be awesome to watch that. So.
If Greg Hardy loses this fight, it's going to be because of his mental decisions. Tai Tuivasa is an extremely intelligent, high IQ fighter. and he's very good at telegraphing his opponent's strikes and countering. So Greg Hardy, if he connects with Tuivasa, he's got to connect, but I think he will.
Okay. All right. So again, thanks for coming on, Kyle. But before we end the interview, if you want to talk more about the podcast, and also you had something else you were about to start. You were talking to me before the interview. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. Yeah, I just got a few things. We are going to be, me and Andrew from the Pickle podcast are going to be on DJ Brian Lee's podcast on this coming Tuesday. So make sure to go check that out. I think he'll have that up the next day. We're going to have some interesting stuff on there about what we're doing. So check that out if you want to see what we're doing. I will also say that we're starting up the podcast again. We're doing the Pickle podcast. We're also doing something called Friends Cast, where we actually just have people on, that we know, and we just talk about whatever we want. So it's going to be a free for all, and it's going to be super fun. The last thing that we're doing, JJ, and that I know I had talked to you about before, is we are attempting to start a sports book company where we can give people realistic betting analysis and background information on these fights. They happen every week. There's a huge market for it. And the reason we're doing this is because people who are betting not much money on sports right now, who don't have a lot of cash flow to bet, are winning hundreds of dollars off of $10 worth of parlays with the system that we've been doing. So we're going to be putting this information out on the Pickle podcast soon, and you can find it all there. So if you like betting on sports and you want to put minimal money down and maximize your profits on sports betting, especially UFC, make sure you check out the Pickle podcast page. We will be updating you on the G2G Sportsbook soon. And hopefully, JJ, you are going to be a part of that as well.
Okay, sounds awesome. Again, don't forget to check out the Pickle podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, pretty much wherever you get your podcast. Also, check out his new betting app. Of course, you can follow him on Instagram at Facebook at the Pickle podcast. Is there anything else you want to add before we end the interview?
Everybody, get your popcorn for these fights. It's going to be one of the best cards of the year.
All right. Thanks again, Kyle, for coming on, and have a wonderful night.
You too, JJ. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Town podcast, or the STP pod for short. If you want to check out more videos of the Sports Town podcast, click on the left. If you want to subscribe to the channel, click on the right.